As I walk across the earth, thousands of things I get to see. Birds fly high, soaring higher, and in the flowers I hear the buzz of bees. The sun at the dawn rises within the hills, mountains covered with snow shining like the crown of silver, and the waves touching the cliffs. The waterfall flowing down the green-blue mountains, rivers forming a dream delta before entering the sea. And while walking on the beach at night, I feel the cool and sweet smelling breeze, the slashing sound of love and peace, the moon over the sea, shining like a bell of gold. And in every step, my eyes hold wonder. I bend on my knee to thank the Mother Earth, and is the truth. It's a great pleasure for me to live in this wonderland. It is my honor to introduce Robin Littlewing Sigo. Robin Littlewing Sigo is a Suquamish tribal member and lifelong resident of Suquamish. She is the Tribal Council Treasurer and Director of the Suquamish Foundation. She describes herself as a researcher of love, a healer, and a story catcher. Mother to 4 children, and considers herself an auntie to every child she sees. Whether working or playing, you'll usually find her collecting sweet moments, helping others tell their stories, and petting cats. Here's Robin with the heart of the mindful guest.
I'll be doing a reading really quickly from Braiding Sweetgrass. Page 6. On one side of the world were people whose relationship with the living world was shaped by Sky Woman, who created a garden for the well-being of all. On the other side was another woman with a garden and a tree, but for tasting its fruit, she was banished from the garden, and the gates clanged shut behind her. That mother of men was made to wander in the wilderness and earn her bread by the sweat of her brow, not by filling her mouth with the sweet, juicy fruits that bend the branches low. In order to eat, she was instructed to subdue the wilderness into which she was cast. Same species, same earth, different stories. Like creation stories everywhere, cosmologies are a source of identity and orientation to the world. They tell us who we are. We are inevitably shaped by them, no matter how distant they may be from our consciousness. One story leads to the generous embrace of the living world, and the other to banishment. One woman is our ancestral gardener, a co-creator of the good green world that would be the home of her descendants. The other was an exile, just passing through an alien world on a rough road to her real home in heaven. And then they met, the offspring of Sky Woman and the children of Eve, and the land around us bears the scars of that meeting, the echoes of our stories. When I meet someone that I easily connect with, I think our ancestors would have been friends. A connection of heart, of the stars, of the wind. Without even talking to one another, we connect over a piece of jewelry, or the ability to help someone, or by smiling at the same laughing child. We acknowledge each other with smiles and nods and quizzical eyebrows. It's connection. It's the start of those connections. What do we do next? What do we do when we see that person who seems like, as Anne Shirley would say, a kindred spirit? A lot of times they can lead to introductions. Hatslahale. Hello, friends. Good day. Robin Littlewing Sigo Teasda. I am Robin Littlewing Sigo. I am from this place, Suquamish, land of the clear salt water. And for those who don't know, I used to attend the same church. I was married in this church by Reverend Kroll, who I see is on here too. And I remember him from being a kindergartner and walking over from Suquamish Elementary, and that Linda would come into our class and talk to the students and read us stories. And I thought she was just one of the most beautiful women I'd ever seen. She always dressed so stylishly, and she was so kind. And I remember both of their smiles all the time. That helps build the garden, that helps build the community. And my kids, I love that my kids are in Kids in Concert, and that Kids in Concert is at the which I call the Little Brown Church, even though it's not brown anymore. And so we'll say around here, you know, the brown church that's not brown anymore is the place name that we hold on there. So I love that this connection keeps bringing me back to this wonderful place, because it's exactly what I think a church should be. It's what I was lucky and fortunate enough to know, that this is what churches can be like a community center, a safe space, a place where you get greeted with smiles and with food if you need food, and you know, you're just walking through and there's always something nice to be seen there. So I'm really happy to be here today. I also did not know that you guys were reading Braiding Sweetgrass. And I have been saying for this during the pandemic that it's become my Bible. I've read it 3 times now, and I listen to it in my car on an audiobook just all the time, because I'm in a place in my life where this is just what I need. And so me bringing this with me today to help guide this seems like it was just meant to be, like we were all meant to be here this beautiful Sunday together, looking at ways for our communities to get closer, to build a more solid foundation together. I'm reminded regularly that while I've done a good job assimilating, that it's really clear to me that I don't speak the same language as most white people. I was fortunate to be given the embodied language of my ancestors' hearts and intention and ceremony. I have been shown since before my physical presence showed up here on this earth how to live in ceremony, both as a host, and here in Suquamish, we pride ourselves on being good hosts, and as a guest. And I live always knowing that I am always a host and always a guest here on Mother Earth. That is the beautiful reciprocity that keeps me connected and grounded and moving forward. This is from page 122 in Braiding Sweetgrass. People often ask me what one thing I would recommend to restore relationships between land and people. My answer is always plant a garden. It's good for the health of the earth. It's good for the health of people. A garden is a nursery for nurturing connections, the soil for cultivation of practical reverence, and its power goes far beyond the garden gates. Once you develop a relationship with a little patch of earth, it becomes a seed itself. Something essential happens in a vegetable garden. It's a place where you can't say I love you out loud. You can say it in seeds. So, how do we plant the garden of community? Excuse me. How do we plant the garden of community in a land that was colonized by your people, with the people who were colonized? If we think of it as a garden, it is certainly one that is buried under so much toxicity. Part of our disconnect is that Americans have been told that their land is theirs. They are not guests. They don't see themselves as guests. They see themselves as owners. But we as the Suquamish people keep trying to show how to be good guests. By being good guests, we recognize that people came over with different ideas, but we all thought that being a guest was the same thing and that we could all host something together. In preparation for this, I've been talking a lot about being a good guest with the opening of our new playground. And if you haven't had a chance to walk through, I really invite you to please go and walk through. It's been the last 7 years of my life trying to get that open and doing a lot of work. And we interviewed a lot of kids to talk to them about what they wanted in a playground. And we talked to a lot of tribal members about what stories they would want and that process of learning through play. And as we start, and people can get really upset. And I posted something on Facebook and mentioned that we just needed to have a day and a half where tribal members could use that playground by themselves and to give that space. There was nobody enforcing that. It was just a request, but a strong request. And there's always this conversation, right, about who owns something, and we've learned that as Native people, we've struggled with that. And we can be very territorial, which territorial is different than private property kinds of feels, right? Like we see that with dogs who decide that this is their area. I was at the beach yesterday and these dogs just decided that this was their area, and any kids that ran out into the water by their area, they were very concerned about them, right? We can't decide what we're going to feel territorial over, but we can work on what that looks like. How do we share space? How do we share boundaries? So as the park gets to open, we talk about all these places, like it says you need to wear a mask. And a lot of people choose not to wear masks. Maybe not a lot. Fortunately, we're in an area where lots of people do choose to wear masks. But when we're putting requests in our playgrounds, in our parks, down at the House of Waking Culture on the dock, I think that there has been an assumption that it's public property. And in fact, it is not public property. The tribe owns that property, not just the soulful ownership where we take care of that because we're stewards of the land and it's our responsibility, but we've gone above and beyond that and taken money, our money, and purchased that to buy it. That means that we really could put a fence around it, that it could be like a private pool or somebody's backyard, or it could be like Blodell Reserve and you could buy a membership to come in if we decided to let you do that. And so in some of these conversations that I've read on Facebook and before Facebook, just those conversations, is that it's similar to somebody walking through your backyard. It's similar to being a guest in someone's home or hosting somebody at your home, and that there's a level of expectation. But we haven't said what those rules are. I think we try to showcase what they are, and we try to model that behavior. Because as I looked up, what does it mean to be a good guest for this? All of them were the same. I mean, everyone that I checked, and looking cross-culturally, they were all the same. And they almost all started with, bring a gift. Be respectful of their schedules. Follow house rules. Act more appropriate than usual. Be extremely helpful. Leave it cleaner, happier, healthier than when you arrived. Say thank you throughout. Share the story of their generosity. Share the story of their generosity. I love how all of these go, right? I mean, we talk about our friends like that. We'll post it on Facebook. We'll tell somebody else. Like, I want to say, like, Amy and I have kids that went to school together, and I know her from there. And I'm so glad that I have Facebook to like continue to make those connections, because I don't know that I would have known that she was a knitter and that she makes these amazing sweaters. But I find that connection with her, and then it means that next time I get to talk more about it. I also know that she will volunteer, and she approaches things with love and kindness. And I'm going to tell people that when they say, "Oh, do you know Amy?" And I'm going to be like, "Oh my gosh, yes, I do." And those are how we share stories, right? Those were the ways. We're a strong witness culture. And I suspect that all of us come from some village down our ancestral line that was also a witness culture, because we didn't always have the written word. We had the stories, and somebody tells those stories. So when I look at this guest list, like what it is, and I think of myself as somebody who's really good in walking in both worlds, I think that a lot of times I have seen my people, I have seen Suquamish people and Native people and immigrants come up and bring a gift, but it doesn't always look like the gift that we expect it to look like. And one of the things that I love about the Braiding Sweetgrass book, and I love about the part about doing an offering in church, because I went to a Sunday school that was down in the old Mosquito Fleet Ferry building downtown Suquamish that my great aunt and uncle, Luther and Delore Mills, would run down there. And Delore still, even after Luther has passed on, she started the food bank down here in Suquamish. It was a Sunday school, and I didn't know of hellfire and brimstone. All I knew was a God and a Jesus that wanted wonderful things for us and wanted us to do wonderful things for other people. I didn't have the dogma associated with church that a lot of people do. So all of these things about bringing a gift and being respectful, being more appropriate than usual. We would go and sing to homebound elders. We would do community cleanup projects. And when my mom was looking for a church when we were older for our whole family, and she found the Little Brown Church in Suquamish, we found those same things there. And I don't think I realized at the time, being a teenager, just how important a church was, because I grew up with feeling like every place I was had those same connections. Everywhere I would go, I would find I would find an auntie or an uncle. I would find grandparents. I mean, I always called Luther and Delore grandma and grandpa, even though they weren't technically my grandma and grandpa. I always found cousins everywhere I went. And I do consider myself an auntie to every child I meet, because they're all my responsibilities. When I hear about people saying, "Well, I saw these kids and they were unsupervised," and I was like, well, then they weren't unsupervised because you were right there. You got to be there in case something happened to them, in case they needed somebody, in case they fell down, in case they needed somebody to call for somebody to find and help them. You were right there. And I remember Dick and Linda once saying their daughter had this amazing bright yellow Mustang, and we would see it driving around, and we would know that that was Chandra over there driving around in this really cool car. And they said, she has that car, but everybody's watching out for her then. Everybody knows where that car is. And I was like, Oh, yeah. See, these people have been on the res. They know what it's like in a reservation because that's what we all do here. If I skipped school, I suddenly had aunties and uncles who'd be like, thought you wanted to go to college. I heard you skip school because my mom told my business to other people because it was their business too. How do we stay in each other's business in a really great way, in a way that helps us be good guests, non-judgmental guests? So when we're looking at how to do this, thinking a lot like what we can't have an expectation for somebody if they don't know what those expectations are. And so that's something that I've been working on lately. And so when the invitation to come and talk here was offered, I said yes much quicker than I thought I would. I'm here because I believe in this church. I believe in the community around it. I believe in the kitchen. I believe in the Wednesday night meals. I believe in, kids in concert having bucket camp all around the outside and it just being a beautiful place to convene, that it's easy to walk to, that it's very central. And I think that you all have some of the best soil to start this garden, to start this conversation of how to be good guests and how to be good hosts, and that a new world is possible because of those things. So when I think about becoming a mindful guest, I think it starts where so many things start. It starts in our hearts. And then, our brains sometimes think back and forth about it over all the different things. Well, maybe this and maybe that. And that's kind of scary because I don't know what it's going to be met with. And as a chronic overthinker, I have thought of a lot of those things. So I understand what I'm asking you to do. But your brain will come along. I also have a background as a mental health counselor and did a lot of dialectic behavioral therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy. So I know your brain can change. I know that we can practice some of these things. And so I think about mindfulness because it is, in so many ways proven to do really amazing work, both for us individually as well as for those around us. And it was really easy for me to see, growing up with the spirituality that I had and attending a Sunday school and this church, that, mindfulness seemed easy because that's what I'd heard in these spaces. That feeling of just noticing. Notice what's going on here, where you can hear people softly walking on carpets, where you can hear somebody getting ready to play the piano. You hear that open up. You hear people around you shuffling, getting settled, all of those things that they need to do. But it also means noticing right in our brain the moment that we start to add in some of those colonized behaviors that don't help us at all. Because if our intention is to learn how to be a good guest, then we have to remind our brain to not question every single thing. It means that maybe when a firework goes off in Suquamish, instead of being like, oh, damn Indians, damn it, I live on a reservation, it's always going to be like this. That instead it's like, yes. And that was one of the few ways that they were able to make money when they had nothing. And so twice a year during those times, they were able to make money that way. And we're glad that they found a way to make money. And this is coming from me, who I have to work on that too, because I really don't like fireworks and my dog does not like fireworks. And I had twin babies and did not like fireworks then. But that's where I fall to the next one, which is the non-judgmental listening and stance and responses. And I always think of, the great Michelle Obama quote when she says, when they go low, we go high. And that's what I aspire to be. But sometimes I'm a little petty and I have that moment of like, ugh, fireworks, or, why is somebody with that loud engine going off? And then I take that moment to be like, and what else is true? And, that person might be running somewhere. Maybe they couldn't get their muffler fixed. Maybe that's just for some reason they need to take up that amount of space in the world right now. And I don't know what that is and how much does it actually impact me. And that process of listening non-judgmentally, standing in a non-judgmental state, where instead of when we get prickly, then we can kind of relax it a little bit and remind ourselves. So I don't automatically go there. Sometimes I go petty. And then I need to notice that and know how I can do better. Be grateful. Be grateful for all of these things. And I think we've all had so much time this last year to learn to be grateful for small things, learn to be grateful for, small cotton masks that somebody made for you or somebody gave out, or you found one by one of your favorite artists that is struggling right now because they're not able to do what they were going to do. Be grateful. Empty the noise and be still. It's sometimes hard. Even just sitting here, I can hear motorcycles going by my office, and it's hard to find the stillness, but we do. And that breath, right? That sometimes we're just going to breathe through interactions with people when we don't know how to handle those, but we're going to be there for them. We're going to be there for ourselves. And sometimes the best way to be somewhere for somebody is maybe to go. And that's okay too. Practice gratitude. Enjoy nature. And then there's the self-reflection piece, right? That's what I talked about in terms of listening non-judgmentally and stopping your brain and then going back to noticing where you are after that piece. It's a process. It's going to ebb and flow. I always like to think of it as the tide. It might go out for a while, but it's definitely going to come back in. And sometimes it's going to come in easy, and sometimes it's going to come out really hard. Sometimes it's a storm, and sometimes it's calm, but it's always going to keep moving. So I think, as I'm thinking about this now, I think that process to over-explain sometimes, which I am guilty of myself, gets us away from where we want to be, which is we want to be good guests. We want to greet people in the best way we can. And we know that sometimes greeting people during a change is going to be met with anger or grief or relief. And relief might sometimes come out looking like those things too. So I'm going to ask that as you start tending this garden where, we get to be mindful guests and hosts with one another, I'm going to ask you to smile. Smile at every child you see. Because children raised on smiles and gestures of goodwill will be resilient. And with resilience comes new place memories, and those they can pass down to their children. Then our great, great, great grandchildren can say with certainty when they meet that our ancestors were friends because of the work that we've all done together. I have one more passage for you. And I hope if you haven't read this book, at least pick it up at one of your local book places. Like I got mine at Book It Nook. And really they're just great passages. It is like reading the Bible where you just open up and you can just find one. that just speaks to you no matter what. It's really an investment in yourself. So this is page 336. Many Indigenous people share the understanding that we are each endowed with a particular gift, a unique ability. Birds to sing, stars to glitter, for instance. It is understood that these gifts have a dual nature, though. A gift is also a responsibility. If the bird's gift is a song, then it has a responsibility to greet the day with music. It is the duty of birds to sing and the rest of us to receive the song as a gift. Asking what is our responsibility is perhaps also to ask, what is our gift and how shall we use it? Ahoyth Chad, I am finished.